The door to the family home in Houston slammed with a force that rattled the windows. "You are dead to us, Anthony," his father snarled, the words slicing through the humid Texas air like a blade. Anthony stood frozen in the living room, his suitcase already packed at his feet, the weight of 10 years of hidden truth finally crashing down around him. His mother sat at the dining table, her hands trembling over a half-finished cup of coffee, unable to meet his eyes, while his younger brother stared at the floor, muttering something about how this would ruin the family name. It had started with a simple question at dinner about why Anthony had not brought a girlfriend home in years, and when he finally said the words, "I am gay, and I have been seeing someone for 2 years," the room had exploded. His father, a proud construction company owner who built half the new developments in the suburbs, had turned purple with rage, calling it a phase of betrayal, a sin against God and family. Now at 22, Anthony was being erased from their lives as if he had never existed. He picked up the suitcase, his chest tight with a mix of grief and strange relief, and walked out into the warm evening without looking back. The Uber ride to the bus station felt endless, the city lights blurring through tears he refused to let fall. On the long Greyhound ride to New York, he replayed every moment, the secret text to Hudson, the stolen weekends, the way Hudson always made him feel seen and whole. Hudson had begged him to come sooner, but Anthony had held on, hoping for acceptance that never came. When the bus finally pulled into the Port Authority at dawn, Hudson was waiting, arms open, his tall, athletic frame a beacon in the chaotic terminal. They held each other right there among the crowds, not caring who saw, and for the first time in hours, Anthony breathed freely. Hudson drove them to his small apartment in Queens, the one he had been saving for them both, and as they climbed the stairs, Anthony whispered, "I have nothing left." Hudson squeezed his hand and replied, "You have me, and that is everything." The next weeks were a blur of job applications and cheap takeout, Anthony crashing on the couch while he searched for work in marketing, entry-level gigs that barely paid rent. Nights were filled with quiet talks, Hudson listening as Anthony unpacked years of shame, the way his father had drilled traditional values into him, the fear that loving another man made him less of a son. Hudson shared his own story of coming out in a small Ohio town and how it had cost him contact with cousins but gained him a chosen family in the city. Slowly, Anthony began to feel the cracks in his heart heal, just a little each time Hudson cooked breakfast or held him through nightmares of the slammed door. One afternoon, Anthony landed a part-time position at a small digital agency, and the celebration was simple: pizza on the rooftop, where Hudson pulled him close under the stars and said, "We are building our own life now, no one can take that away." Yet the pain lingered like a shadow, Anthony checking his phone for messages that never came, wondering if his mother cried at night or if his brother had erased his photos from the family album. The internal war raged on. Some days he felt liberated, others he questioned if his truth was worth the cost of losing the only family he had known. Hudson never pushed, only offered steady presence and gentle reminders that love did not require permission. By the end of the first month, Anthony had his own key to the apartment, and they started calling it home, even as the world outside reminded him daily that not everyone saw their bond as valid. A coworker made a casual joke about real men, and Anthony froze, but Hudson later helped him rehearse responses, turning fear into quiet strength. The journey had just begun, but in Hudson's arms, Anthony felt the first spark of a future he could claim for himself, one built on honesty, not silence. Months slipped by in the rhythm of city life, Anthony throwing himself into his new job, learning the fast-paced world of social media campaigns, while Hudson balanced shifts at a graphic design firm. Their apartment grew cozier with secondhand furniture and photos of weekend escapes to Central Park, where they walked hand in hand, ignoring the occasional stares. Anthony still woke some nights sweating from dreams of his father's voice, declaring him dead, but Hudson would pull him close, whispering words of affirmation until the panic eased. One evening, after a tough client meeting, Anthony came home to find Hudson had set up a small table with candles and takeout from their favorite Thai place. They talked for hours about the future, Anthony admitting the constant ache of wondering if his family ever thought of him, and Hudson sharing how he had once felt the same emptiness until he chose to surround himself with people who celebrated who he was. Their bond deepened in those vulnerable moments, hands intertwined across the table, eyes locked in understanding. Yet challenges tested them. A straight coworker at Anthony's agency invited him to a team happy hour, then made awkward comments when Anthony mentioned his boyfriend, leading to a tense conversation about staying authentic. Anthony chose to speak up politely, and to his surprise, several colleagues nodded in support, opening doors to new friendships within the office. Still, the financial strain weighed. Heavy rent increases and unexpected medical bills for a minor injury Hudson suffered at work, forcing them to cut back on everything. Anthony took on freelance gigs late into the night, his eyes burning from screen time, but he refused to complain because for the first time he was building something real. A misunderstanding arose when an old college friend from Texas reached out online congratulating Anthony on his move, then casually asked if he had fixed his lifestyle, yet the message reopening old wounds. Anthony deleted it without replying, but the doubt crept in, making him withdraw for a few days until Hudson sat him down and said, "Your past does not define your worth here." They spent the weekend exploring the city, visiting museums, and sharing ice cream on a bench by the river, talking through the layers of shame Anthony carried. By Monday, he felt lighter, deciding to join a local support group for young gay men navigating family estrangement where stories mirrored his own and offered hope. Hudson attended a few sessions too, learning how to be the anchor Anthony needed without trying to fix everything. Their love grew through these trials, small acts like Hudson leaving encouraging notes in Anthony's lunch bag or Anthony surprising him with tickets to a Broadway show they could barely afford. One quiet Sunday, they cooked together in the tiny kitchen, laughing when sauce spilled, and in that moment Anthony realized he was no longer just surviving, he was thriving in a life chosen with intention. The internal crisis of identity lingered, less frequently replaced by a growing confidence that loving Hudson was not a flaw but a strength. Yet whispers from the past remained. His mother's birthday passed without a card, and he fought the urge to call, knowing the rejection would cut deeper. Hudson encouraged therapy sessions where Anthony unpacked the pressure of being the eldest son, the expectation to carry the family legacy now shattered. Progress came slowly but surely, each session chipping away at the belief that he was broken. By the end of the year, Anthony received a small promotion at work, his first real raise, and they toasted with cheap champagne on the rooftop, promising each other that no matter what came next, they faced it together. The city hummed below them, a reminder that new beginnings were possible, even after being told you no longer existed. 5 years had transformed Anthony from the broken young man who arrived in New York into a confident account manager at a growing marketing firm, his salary finally allowing them to move to a brighter one-bedroom in Brooklyn. Hudson had risen to senior designer at his agency, their lives woven with shared routines, morning coffee runs, evening walks along the waterfront, a circle of friends who became like family. Yet the past refused to stay. Buried, a letter from his sister arrived one afternoon, postmarked from Houston, detailing the family business struggles and hinting that their father had softened, but never mentioning Anthony by name. He read it aloud to Hudson, his voice cracking at the casual omission, feeling the old wound reopen. They spent the night talking, Anthony pacing the living room, questioning if reaching out would heal or destroy the peace he had built. Hudson listened, offering perspective from his own distant relatives, reminding him that forgiveness was a choice, not an obligation. Their relationship faced its own test when Hudson received a job offer in Chicago that would mean long distance for months. Anthony panicked, the fear of abandonment echoing his family trauma, leading to an argument where words flew about commitment and roots. They reconciled the next day in tears, promising to prioritize their bond over career moves, Hudson ultimately turning down the offer. The experience strengthened them both, highlighting how Anthony's past still shaped his reactions. At work, Anthony led a campaign for an LGBTQ nonprofit, and the positive feedback boosted his confidence, but also stirred memories of the dinner table where his truth had been condemned. He spoke at a company diversity event, sharing a carefully edited version of his journey, the applause from colleagues a stark contrast to the silence from home. Hudson cheered from the audience, his pride evident in every glance. Financially, things stabilized. They started saving for a down payment on a small place, dreaming of stability. A weekend trip to the Hamptons with friends brought laughter and sun, but also a moment of quiet reflection when Anthony watched a father and son playing catch on the beach, the simple scene twisting his heart. Back in the city, he began journaling, processing the grief of lost milestones, birthdays, holidays, the father-son talks that would never happen. Hudson supported without pressure, joining him for long runs along the East River, where they discussed everything from politics to personal growth. One evening after a tough therapy session, Anthony admitted the lingering belief that his sexuality had cost him everything. Hudson countered gently that it had given him authenticity and a love most people only dream of. Their intimacy evolved into deeper emotional connection, quiet nights reading together or planning future travels. A minor crisis hit when a distant relative messaged Anthony, asking for money, claiming family hardship. He refused, but the contact stirred old guilt until Hudson helped him see boundaries as self-care, not selfishness. By the close of the year, Anthony felt a shift, the pain still present, but no longer defining him, his identity as a gay man a source of pride rather than shame. Hudson proposed a simple commitment ceremony with close friends in Central Park, the vows exchanged under blooming trees, a celebration of the life they had chosen. Anthony said yes with tears of joy, realizing he had found home not in Houston, but in the man who stood beside him through every storm. 10 years on. Anthony and Hudson had built a solid life together in a cozy brownstone they bought in Brooklyn, their careers thriving. Anthony, now a director of client strategy, and Hudson heading his own small design studio. Friends filled their weekends with brunches and game nights, a chosen family that filled the gaps left by blood relatives. Anthony had grown into a man of quiet strength, mentoring younger colleagues at work and volunteering at LGBTQ youth centers, sharing his story of resilience. Yet the shadow of his past lengthened when news reached him through a mutual acquaintance that his father's construction company faced mounting debts from bad investments and market shifts. He dismissed it at first, focusing on his own world, but the information lingered like an itch he could not scratch. Hudson noticed the distraction during their evening run, suggesting they talk it through over dinner. Anthony, opening up about the conflicting emotions, anger at the rejection mixed with unexpected concern for the family that had erased him. They spent hours weighing options, Hudson cautioning against rushing back into pain, while affirming Anthony's right to whatever closure he sought. Their relationship remained the anchor, Hudson planning a surprise anniversary trip to Italy, where they wandered ancient streets hand in hand, discussing dreams of starting a family through adoption one day. Back home, Anthony received a call from his grandfather, a man he had not spoken to in years, the old man's voice weak but warm, revealing a secret admiration for Anthony's courage and hinting at health issues. The conversation stirred something deep. Anthony, visiting the grandfather in a Houston hospital on a quick solo trip, the two sharing stories, the elder admitting he had always suspected and supported from afar. The visit remained hidden from the immediate family, but planted seeds of possibility. Work brought new pressures. A major client account demanded late nights, testing Anthony's balance with home life. Hudson stepping up with patience and homemade meals. A misunderstanding with a friend who questioned why Anthony never visited Texas led to a heated debate on chosen versus given family. Anthony defending his boundaries fiercely. Therapy continued, helping him navigate the guilt that resurfaced during holidays when social media filled with family photos excluding him. Hudson organized a Friendsgiving that year, their apartment overflowing with laughter and support, a reminder of the community he had gained. Financially secure, they invested in a small rental property, planning for the future, but Anthony's mind often drifted to the company his father had poured his life into, now teetering on the edge. One night, he confessed to Hudson the pull to help despite everything, the internal battle between resentment and the boy who once sought approval. Hudson held him close, saying, "Whatever you decide, I stand with you." The year ended with a quiet New Year's Eve on their rooftop, fireworks lighting the sky as Anthony reflected on how far he had come from the boy declared dead to the man who defined his own worth. The foundation was strong, but the call of the past grew louder, setting the stage for the decisions that would test everything they had built. The phone call came on a crisp autumn morning, Anthony sipping coffee at the kitchen table, when the lawyer introduced himself as executor of his grandfather's estate. The news hit like a thunderbolt. The grandfather had passed peacefully and left Anthony the sole beneficiary of a trust worth $31 million earmarked specifically for the grandson who had the courage to live truthfully. Shock rooted him in place, Hudson rushing over from the studio to find him staring at the wall, the documents spread across the table. They spent the afternoon in the lawyer's sleek Manhattan office reviewing details, the will praising Anthony's strength in a private letter attached, the old man revealing he had followed Anthony's career from afar and wanted to ensure his future. Joy mixed with profound sadness, Anthony weeping for the grandfather who had seen him when others had not. Hudson held him through it all, the two discussing late into the night the responsibility that came with such wealth, how it could change their lives but also reopen old wounds. Anthony felt a surge of empowerment, yet the internal question swirled, was this validation or just money? Could it erase the years of silence from his parents? They consulted financial advisors, mapping out plans for investment, charity, and security, but Anthony's thoughts kept returning to Houston. The family business on the brink is confirmed by discreet inquiries. Hudson worried openly about the emotional toll, urging caution, but supported Anthony's need to process a loan during long walks through Prospect Park. The inheritance brought practical changes. They paid off debts, upgraded their home, and donated to causes close to their hearts, including LGBTQ shelters. Yet the windfall amplified Anthony's internal conflict. Nights spent journaling, the pain of being declared dead contrasted with this unexpected lifeline from a family member who had chosen differently. A heated discussion arose when Hudson expressed fear that helping the family might invite manipulation, Anthony defending his autonomy, the conversation ending in reconciliation and deeper understanding. Friends offered mixed advice, some cheering the karma, others warning of toxic dynamics. Anthony flew to Texas briefly for the private funeral, avoiding his parents, but feeling the pull stronger than ever. Back in New York, he and Hudson hosted a small gathering to celebrate the grandfather, honoring his memory, with stories and toasts the evening reinforcing their bond. The decision loomed larger daily. Anthony, researching the family company's finances, discovering years of mismanagement and mounting loans that threatened everything his father had built. The ethical dilemma consumed him: help the people who had rejected him, or walk away, preserving his peace. Hudson suggested couples counseling to navigate the strain, the sessions revealing layers of unresolved grief and love. By winter's end, Anthony knew he could not ignore the call. The inheritance, not just a gift, but a tool for healing or closure. The choice ahead would define the next chapter of his growth. Word of the inheritance somehow reached Houston before Anthony could act. His sister, calling one evening, her voice tentative, asking if the rumors were true. The conversation was brief and awkward, but it opened the door to more contact, his mother sending a text filled with careful words about the company's dire straits. Anthony and Hudson debated for weeks, the arguments circling around forgiveness, boundaries, and self-preservation. Hudson, concerned that old patterns of rejection would resurface, while Anthony grappled with the man he had become versus the boy who craved approval. They flew to Texas together, staying in a neutral hotel, Anthony arranging a meeting with a family lawyer to understand the full scope of the crisis: millions in debt, potential foreclosure on properties that employ dozens. The data was sobering: his father's stubborn pride, having ignored warning signs, now leaving the legacy hanging by a thread. Internal turmoil piqued Anthony, pacing hotel rooms, questioning his motives. Was it revenge, compassion, or something in between? Hudson providing steady counsel, reminding him that true strength lay in conscious choice, not reaction. A near breaking point came during a private argument where Anthony accused Hudson of not understanding the blood tie. Hudson responding with hurt, but ultimately reaffirming his commitment, the makeup deepening their partnership. They returned to New York with a plan, Anthony deciding to initiate contact on his terms, drafting a letter outlining conditions for any assistance, therapy, acceptance, and transparency. Responses trickled in: his brother defensive, his father silent, his mother hopeful yet guarded. The emotional labor exhausted Anthony. Therapy sessions focusing on reclaiming power from the past, Hudson attending some to learn how best to support without overstepping. Work suffered slightly, deadlines slipping, but colleagues offered understanding. He shared the broad strokes. Friends rallied with advice ranging from full cutoff to conditional aid, the debates mirroring his inner conflict. One weekend they escaped to a cabin upstate, the quiet woods, allowing raw conversations, Anthony voicing the fear that money could buy reconciliation, but not genuine change. Hudson listening and challenging him to define what healing looked like. The decision crystallized during a late-night talk, Anthony realizing he could help without erasing the pain, setting boundaries to protect the life they had built. Back in the city, he scheduled the boardroom meeting, the anticipation building like a storm, the rising tension palpable in every call and email. Hudson prepared alongside him, reviewing financial proposals, ensuring the offer protected Anthony's interests. The journey to this point had forged Anthony into someone who understood that love and family were not owed but earned through actions, and the test ahead would reveal whether the family could meet him there. The boardroom in Houston gleamed under bright fluorescent lights. The family gathered around the long table, his father looking older and weary, his mother with red-rimmed eyes, his siblings shifting uncomfortably. Anthony entered with Hudson at his side, the two standing tall as he laid out the proposal: $31 million to stabilize the company in exchange for formal acknowledgement of his identity, ongoing family therapy, and no strings on his personal life. The room erupted, his father initially resistant, blustering about pride and past mistakes, his brother questioning the conditions, but his mother broke first, tears flowing as she admitted the fear that had driven the rejection years ago: societal pressure and their own upbringing. Misunderstandings surfaced, accusations of betrayal, met with Anthony's calm recounting of the slammed door, the years of silence, the internal scars that therapy had only begun to heal. Hudson interjected at key moments, his presence the quiet force, underscoring the support Anthony had found outside blood ties. Tension peaked when his father demanded full control over the funds, Anthony standing firm, explaining the structured trust that ensured accountability, the room falling silent as the weight of consequences settled. Revelations poured out, his father confessing regret over harsh words, his sister admitting she had wanted to reach out but feared backlash, the air thick with raw emotion. Anthony shared his journey, the struggles in New York, the growth, the love with Hudson that had taught him self-worth, the family listening, some nodding, others staring at the table. A breakthrough came when his mother hugged him tentatively, the first physical contact in over a decade, the moment heavy with unsaid apologies. Hudson facilitated calmer discussion, outlining next steps, investments in the company with oversight from neutral advisors. By the meeting's end, agreements were signed, tentative handshakes exchanged, the family committing to sessions starting the following week. Anthony left the building exhausted, yet lighter, the confrontation a catharsis. He had not known he needed Hudson driving them back to the hotel, where they'd debriefed, processing the mix of relief, anger, and hope. The following days brought more talks, private dinners where old stories resurfaced, laughter mixing with tears. Anthony setting clear limits on involvement while opening the door to gradual rebuilding. Hudson remained the steady anchor, his calm presence helping navigate the shifting dynamics. The high point arrived during a family meal where his father raised a glass to second chances, the gesture small but significant. Anthony reflected nightly, the growth evident in his ability to forgive without forgetting, the man he had become, capable of compassion without self-erasure. The climax of years of pain and resilience culminated in this uneasy but real bridge, the family beginning to see the son they had declared dead now very much alive and in control of his narrative. The investment took effect swiftly, Anthony overseeing the restructuring from New York with monthly visits to Houston, the company's stabilizing, jobs saved, and new projects launched under stricter management. Family therapy progressed slowly, revelations about generational expectations and fear of difference, paving the way for tentative understanding, his father attending sessions reluctantly at first, then opening up about his own father's rigidity. Anthony and Hudson returned for holidays, now included in gatherings, the dynamic evolving from awkward to cautiously warm, boundaries respected and love expressed in actions rather than grand declarations. Anthony found peace in the balance, helping without losing himself, his career flourishing further with the security the inheritance provided, while Hudson expanded his studio, their shared life richer for the trials survived. Reflection-filled quiet evenings, Anthony journaling the full arc from the slammed door to this new chapter, realizing the inheritance had been catalyst, not cure, the real wealth in the emotional maturity gained. Hudson proposed marriage properly, this time on a trip back to the Brooklyn rooftop where it all began, the yes echoing with joy and certainty. The wedding was intimate, friends and family blending, chosen and blood, the ceremony a testament to growth and acceptance. Years later, looking back, Anthony saw the journey as one of profound transformation, the man declared dead, now thriving, architect of his destiny and mender of fractured bonds. The family business thrived under the new foundation, relationships mended with effort and time, proving that even deep wounds could scar over into strength. Yet the story left room for ongoing questions, the path forward, one of continued choice and vigilance. True or false? A family that once declared you dead for who you love can be fully redeemed through financial salvation and time alone.